Doug MPA back with another video. So guys, there is a famous food critic on social media named Keith Lee, black guy, and he's really popular. He's really popular on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and he just says food reviews. He goes to restaurants, gives his honest opinion. He's been to LA, Chicago, all the major cities. Well, he decided to go to Atlanta, and he said a lot of things that a lot of people in Atlanta have been saying for the longest, that the service there in Atlanta is just awful. And some of the food's bad too, and unlike other cities, Atlanta's coming for him. He had to shut his tour down of Atlanta because of all the pushback. And this got me thinking about my years waiting tables. I spent 10 years on and off, all the way through undergrad and grad school, waiting tables. Doug MPA is black. I've been black for 42 years in this country, and I can tell you, I kind of figured that Keith Lee was going to get this pushback in Atlanta because 53% of Atlanta is black. And this got me to think about tipping, guys. Black people don't tip for anything at all. They just don't. They're the worst tippers out there. Only people I can say maybe are worse than that are like Europeans who are touring the United States, because in Europe they don't have to tip. The price of a tip is in the cost of the food. But other than that, as a group, black people tip the worst. And so I found this article on the grio that's going to cover that. We're going to go into this news story, but before I do that, like the video, subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. It shows you support me and what I'm doing over here. And share your stories about tipping in the comments, please, whether you're white or black, Asian, whatever, if you're listening to this. And if you've ever talked to any of your friends who are black servers, or if you're a black server watching this, put your story in the comments, because I guarantee you I'd agree with you 100%. Black people barely tip, if at all. The sense of entitlement is real. Let's go.
We know that there's studies where black people say they tip less because they get worse service, because the servers expect them to tip less. So in there, they feel justified, if you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting out of the restaurant, that I'm not giving back to the restaurant.
That is 100% true, guys. A lot of the black people that I've met and know, they go into restaurants with this I gotta get them before they get me attitude, or they don't want me there in the first place. And not only that, I lived in DC for 9 years. Too many of us African Americans, we get a little something, we get some money, and think that being high class is criticizing the food, criticizing the restaurant, running the server. Like that's what high class people do. And it's not how it works. Most of us had to work customer service. I never forget my customer service roots. I spent a lot of time waiting tables. I've been that guy. I'll never forget it, but too many of us do, and that's a fact.
But it is complicated, right? And a lot of us do see the tip as a place where we can save a little money. For some reason, some people in the black community think 10 to 15% is the range. It is not. We're supposed to tip 20%, and that is not a grade for the server based on service. That is not for outstanding service. That is common, and there are millions of black and brown tipped workers. So when we are taking it out on tipped workers, we are taking it out on each other.
That's 100% true, because a lot of states still have that server wage where you make $2 an hour waiting tables, and then I don't know if you guys know this, but they tax your paycheck. No, they tax your reported tips out of your paycheck. So a lot of times, a lot of servers are living off their tips, and their tips only, guys. I've had to do it when I lived in Texas, and it sucked. So he's right. Don't take out it unless the server is completely awful. But your tip, the tip for a server is not the place to be taking some kind of moral stand or trying to save money.
Yeah, but I'm sorry. I've seen far too many white people not tip at all. And there isn't this larger narrative that they don't tip. I have seen so many people at airports, at hotels, where it's like you've got black and brown people carrying bags, serving, and white people just don't tip them at all.
But that's not in restaurants, lady. You go to a restaurant expecting to tip. That is the difference between what you're talking about.
And there isn't this larger narrative that white people don't tip, right? We know that Black people over donate, not just to the religious institutions, but to cultural institutions and social service institutions. When we look at the data, we know that Black people stay actually giving money. So this stereotype
has nothing to do with tipped workers, nothing to do with tipped workers at all. And in my opinion, what are you giving money to your church for? 10% in this economy? You're better off giving it to the server than you are the pastor, in my opinion.
Stereotype that we don't tip even when we get poor service. I've gotten poor service and I still tip 20% because of this, I don't want
this
people
is
to
the
think
complicated.
that I'm Black.
Hold y'all. I got to take a break.
over
We can come back and finish this conversation. Everybody stay right here. There's more coming up about this, including why Teray tips so damn much. I want to just tie up this tipping thing because I'm curious about your perspective on this, Teray. So are you saying that Black people should tip 20% no matter what kind of service they get?
Yes.
I'm to that point now too, because the stereotype is so ingrained in the consciousness of America that Black people don't tip. And people like myself, my brother, my sister, everyone I know, we actively try to fight that stereotype by giving good tips. But there's so few of us doing it. Yes, I think that Black people should tip to 20% for the next 30 years so we can buck this stereotype. Everybody knows Black people barely tip. I don't know what they're not understanding about this.
Yes. The tip is not the place where you take it out on the server. If you have a problem, you speak to the server or you speak to the manager. Right?
Agreed.
Right? But the tip is not like a grade for the server where well, you didn't do everything great, so you're only going to get 18%, or you did a lot bad, so you only get 15%. That's not the way that we use the tip. Right? If you go out and have a restaurant experience, you are served, they make the food, they clean it all up for you, they provide a whole 20%, period.
I agree with him 100%. If you can't tip, don't eat out. Make your food at home.
So this hype, baby. So you get a server in a restaurant. They are terrible to you. They're rude. They're nasty. They're slow. And you might even feel based on our conversation
Let me stop you there because this is always the thing that people want to argue about. How many times, Mark, and I know you go out to 5-star restaurants and Michelin restaurants all the time, how many times have you gotten horrible service knowing that I've worked in restaurants? I bet you probably worked in a restaurant at some point in your life, right? You know, these people who work in restaurants, they live on that. Nobody loves the job, but you live on that. That's how you take care of yourself and your family, right? All the service.
Right, but I'm saying, if they give you horrible service,
But when does this horrible service occur?
Oh, I've had horrible service before. Yeah, I've absolutely had horrible service before. And if I get horrible service, I don't want to.
I'm with the guy with the goofy glasses on. I don't get a lot of bad service. I just don't. And when I do, I say something about it. Like I say something about it as it's happening. Guys, if you're getting bad service at a restaurant, say something about it. Don't just let it happen. You need to ask the server why things are going so wrong. Or I know Karens have ruined talking to the manager, but there are times where you have to talk to the manager. But don't just let bad service happen and then leave a bad tip. Restaurants are a reciprocal thing. You have to go into a restaurant wanting good service, and then restaurants have to want people to come in to give them good service. If any part of that social contract is breached, make sure to say something.
Then give them, and I don't. And to be clear, I can't afford to eat at 5-star restaurants. But if I could, and the bill came to say $200 or $300, and then I got awful service, and I felt like it was racist, horrible service, I'm not giving the racist,
horrible service, of course.
Horrible person, $40 or $60 after treating me like that. I will
Mark,
write a note explaining why I didn't give them the service.
If you perceive the waiter to be racist or the establishment to not want you there, you should not make it to the end of the meal.
Boom. He said it. 100%. 100%. He's right. Why did you let all this happen? Say something. Don't be afraid to say, what is going on here? Guys, I'm going to give you some game in the customer service world, okay? You got to say, this is unacceptable. that will make management act. That will make servers act. You just say, look, this food is unacceptable. The service is unacceptable. That is the key term. Use that. It works every single time.
You should leave before the end of the meal. You should leave perhaps before your food comes. If you think the waiter is racist or the restaurant doesn't want you there, why would you eat or drink anything they serve you? That would just be a matter of basic safety. If you don't feel safe as far as your person or racial justice in any institution, in any establishment, you leave. You don't.
Accountability on Black patrons? Oh my God, really? Imagine that.
Don't say I'm going to only pay you this much for our experience.
It's very rarely that overt. It's very rarely that overt.
Here we go with the coping. This Touré guy's 100% correct.
Right? It's very rarely, no one's going to call me the N-word and be like, I don't like Afro. It's more of, that person got bread and they came after me. This person has water and I'm still thirsty. Right? I mean, it's like I've asked for, my glass of wine and it's somehow taking you, 10 minutes to get it, but I see everyone else is getting mixed cocktails, right? So it's usually subtle things where it's hard to say. It's like, are you treating me differently in this establishment, whether it's a Michelin restaurant or just someplace where I'm spending my hard-earned money? And
so you ask about it. You say something, but people just sit there with a mean look on their face and then try to get back at the restaurant. Just say something.
It's not necessarily something where I'm getting up and leaving, and also in New York, it's like leaving and going where? Like eating at the food cart outside? It's like, no, sometimes I actually want to just stay here and eat, and I deserve to stay here and eat. And sometimes it's not even manager worthy. But I think, part of, for some of us, this politics of respectability, which drives me insane, but
these words that women come up with, politics of respectability. That's a new one. I might have to I'm going to look that up and do a video on it.
Still subscribe to it, which is so frustrating. It's like, I will tip 20% even when I'm frustrated with service. But this reputation that I'm not going to tip, I think does feed into how many Black people are treated in restaurants of a certain caliber.
And it speaks to a very particular complexity. We got to move on, but it speaks to a very particular complexity that Black folk have to sort of navigate. We also have to ask a deeper kind of fundamental economic question about how servers are treated in the restaurant industry in the United States, where suddenly they're underpaid and not giving a living wage by the restaurant, and then they're expecting us to supplement that through this system. That also is wildly unfair. And again, it's a distinctly American thing. When you travel in Europe, when I travel in the Middle East, this is not the way that the tipping works. This is not the way that servers are compensated. So I think there's a lot of moving parts, and we can talk about this more. This feels like a good podcast.
Moving parts? No moving parts. Black people barely tip at all, dude. We all know it. And guys, if you're white, Asian, Hispanic, you can't say it at all. Doug and PA will say it. Black people don't tip for nothing. I'll say it for you. Let me know what you think about this. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. I'll catch you on the next one.